This is a ballad that I wrote while I was homeless in the eastern states, as I witnessed, as I observed a particular individual ignored by the masses that walked around him, and the institutions and the symbols of Australian culture, society and the economy that were amassed on the left, the right, to the north and to the south of him. It was an invisibility despite the tremendous view that they had of that individual. Sitting next to a man in a square, in front of a church, a charity and government house, across the street from apartments owned by the richest man, and a bank, our biggest, stamped with the Commonwealth. The heart of power and responsibility, and the proponents of the major paradigms that govern decision making in this nation. And that bloke was there day after day, half naked, torn apart, bronzed with the Southern Cross. Whether it be that bloke or the multitude like him, or the 60,000 West Australians in negative equity, or the central pillars of our economy, the wealthy, the corporate, the dominant industries, I give a shit, and I'll continue to, because that's what egalitarian does. It serves the entirety as long as they're engaged, and it requires their engagement for egalitarian to exist. And when it does exist, when they are engaged, when they are intermingling with one another, it creates that cultural beauty, it generates those social outcomes, and it generates that economic benefit. And we've been enjoying it while not reinvesting in it, and it's at risk of being lost. After 30 years, the longest growth streak in the Western world's history, we've assumed that the decisions made in the previous 5 to 10 years are somehow generating the benefit that we're enjoying, rather than the decisions made in the 70s, 80s and 90s to deregulate a marketplace that took 200 years to create. And we've inflated it, and we've sold it off, and we've taken the advantage of it, and we're in the ominous position of thinking that the benefits that we're enjoying aren't a result of it, but they're a result of the behaviour and the decision making that's occurred in the previous period. And I intend on ensuring that we don't make that mistake, and that it doesn't become a parable about apathy and ignorance, but is instead an account of transitioning us from behind protectionist barriers to the world stage, where we can stand on our own feet and compete against the globe's powerhouses. But that requires a continued invigoration and reinvestment in egalitarian until it becomes self-sustaining. It was self-sustaining behind protectionist barriers. It can be self-sustaining in a free marketplace, but it requires a continued investment and maintenance until it does so automatically, rather than requiring particular intervention. While it was behind protectionist barriers, while it was being built, created and constructed, it required that intervention, and it could exist without it when we got to the latter part of that particular period. But now, as we've removed that regulation, we require particular market calibration in order to ensure that it's safeguarded, and then it can be the contributing dynamic to outcomes socially, economically and culturally in a marketplace, in a nation, in a culture that no longer has the barriers and no longer has the distance that protected it and incubated it. And that's what's important, that we manage to nurture it over the particular line that the deregulation period creates for us. That's the significant transition that we need to accommodise. It's the significant transition that we need to be able to occur in order to make sure that what existed before can exist after. Because it existed before with intervention, now it has to exist in the free marketplace, or our social, economic and cultural outcomes will be significantly decreased. And that's what I intend on ensuring occurs.